Hi, everybody. Welcome to Shannon Q. Let me know in live chat if you can hear me. And welcome. Today we are talking to a little known YouTuber, podcaster, author. Most of you probably haven't heard of him. This is probably the first time you're being exposed to him. So I'm really happy to be presenting him to you guys probably for the first time. He is Seth Andrews. So Seth, thank you for being here with me. I appreciate it. He actually insisted on being here. It was obnoxious, really. But so I said, fine, you can come talk to me. And I let him come on. I'm a gracious host is what I'm saying.
You really are. You really are.
So Seth, in case anybody's foolish enough not to know who you are, why don't you introduce yourself and let everybody know who you are and where they can find you?
Well, I'm a former devout fundamentalist Christian, former Christian radio host. I spent a lot of years in Tulsa, Oklahoma, hosting a Christian morning show. And I was, that guy. We played Amy Grant and Stephen Curtis Chapman, and we prayed on the air, and we did all those things. And, I was raised by devout evangelical parents, and they had great plans for me. I was going to go and change the world for Jesus. And when I hit my late 30s, I, for some reason, came to a point of critical mass, decided, you know what, let's kick the tires and see what this whole Christianity thing's really about. Instead of assuming the belief or having faith, let's find out if it's real. And through a series of different events, and we can talk about that later, I realized there was no there. Like I realized that there was nothing under the house of cards. And I kind of came out of it with a fire in my belly. And so I started a website and YouTube page called The Thinking Atheist back in 2009. The Thinking Atheist is an idea. We reject faith, we embrace reason, and we try to figure it out. And then started the radio podcast online in 2010, and I've been kicking ever since. So it's been, 11, 12 years of activism, and I'm honored to be able to do what I love. I have family all around the world, including Shannon. So it's an honor to be here. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you're here. Seth and I have met each other in person at Faithless Forum. I should have put our selfie up. I forced you to take a selfie with me because that's the type of person that I am. And Seth gives great hugs, and I'm a hugger. So just for the record, he does. He gives great hugs.
It was like an embrace of two kindred spirits who had finally been in the same physical space after all this time.
We do have a lot in common, I think, when it comes to how we engage in the discourse on these platforms. I think that we kind of recognized in each other that we were both looking to have more nuanced dialogues and conversations about complex topics, and that it was plausible and possible, but maybe people weren't interested in it enough or engaging in it enough. And we'll probably get into a little bit of that later, but I think that both of us recognized that in each other and felt, like you said, a little bit of like, a kindred spirit. You get it. You get it.
That was you. I mean, honestly, I see that in you, Paulogia. I see it in Jimmy and Rachel and so many of these other, I hate to sound like, like Gandalf, but your generation, this sort of up and coming group of YouTubers and activists are trying to re-inject kindness and compassion and empathy into the discussion. And that part of what you do really resonated with me. So I feel that kinship. And it's nice to be able to have a conversation where people aren't screaming or looking for clickbait I've been guilty of putting up a thumbnail for clicks here and there, but largely I'm just tired of everybody throwing gasoline on every spark in the hopes of getting attention, because after a while it becomes just white noise, doesn't it? There's so many people screaming that it doesn't even sound like anything, and it becomes a little discouraging.
Yeah, no, I can completely understand. So just a little bit of housekeeping that I skipped over because I just wanted to start talking to Seth because I love talking to Seth.
Go ahead.
If we will be taking questions later, so if you want to ask a question, I will give you a cue so that you can tag me in the question towards the end of the dialogue. Anybody who's usually here knows how that works. If you send a super chat, it'll aggregate them for me, and I will see it later. So we will be taking questions later if there's anything interesting or anything that you want to ask. But in the beginning here, I want to, one, thank you, because you were actually one of the very first guests that I was able to get when I hosted the Heathen Hour podcast and came on the Heathen Hour podcast with us. And that was a big deal for me. So I want to thank you for that. I don't know if you even remember that. This was about almost 2 years ago.
It's back, I think, when you had a less than 1,000 subscribers.
I hadn't even made a video on this channel at that point. I didn't even have a YouTube. I just had a YouTube account. I didn't have a channel. Yeah. And you came on the Heathen Hour with me and Godless Cranium. So thank you for that. You always are such an active participant in the community and supporting people who are looking to be activists. So I want to recognize that in you while I have the opportunity to do so publicly. I'm going to publicly embarrass you.
Okay, sure.
But now we'll get into it. I want to talk about your book. So you have a new book out. There's a link in the description. Because can people still get signed copies, or is it just pre-order now?
Yeah, right now it's the deal is that I'm actually finalizing formatting. The manuscript has been submitted and finalized, copy edited, all that stuff, and now it's just getting it final and ready for print, which I said was going to be August. It might be early July. I don't know. I'm at their disposal. But in the interim, I'm doing a pre-order thing where if somebody wants a signed autographed copy, they can pre-order that on my personal website. You can go to sethandrews.com or thethinkingatheist.com, either one of those. And it'll actually sort of queue in my own email folder. And then I'm going to order boxes of books, depending on how many orders come in. And I'm going to personalize them and send them out myself, which is a weird endeavor. Hundreds of books, and you got the envelopes and the bubble wrap, and you do this, and you make sure the autograph, did you spell it right? No shit, I made a mistake, got to throw the book out. And, I did this with Sacred Cows and Deconverted, and honestly, it's great fun. But it's a way for people to sort of get excited and get if they want an autographed copy. And if they want to wait until the official release in August, there will be an audible.com version, and there will be just the standard Kindle and paperback and hardcover. And it's called Confessions of a Former Fox News Christian, which was me, Shannon. You guys do Fox News in Canada, right? You got Fox News?
We have Fox News in Canada. Yeah, we have a lot of American channels. I wanted to, so can you get into the title? Why did you pick that title?
Well, I was that guy. You got to picture just a corn-fed, white bread Oklahoma boy. And I had every privilege in the world, and I was born to a middle-class family, and I had opportunities and support wherever I needed. And yet I looked around at the United States, and I constantly felt persecuted. They're coming, man. They're coming for us. They're coming for my freedoms, and they're coming for America, and they're coming for my rights, and they're trying to turn everybody into gays and atheists and all these horrible things that my freedom isn't limited in any way whatsoever, but tomorrow it could all be gone. And so I'm, driving home from work, and I'd have Rush Limbaugh, the right-wing talk radio host, on in my car.
Yeah.
And he's talking about this and talking about that. And before you know it, I'm frothing at the mouth, and I got my hands clenched into fists talking about this country's going to hell in a handbasket. What's this country coming to? We need to return to the good old days where things were wholesome and, all that crazy shit.
Yeah.
And, and Fox News is sort of part of that mechanism. It's this sort of reinforcement culture of right-wingers that it constantly tells essentially white Christian America that it's empowered and the country belongs to them. We come from Judeo-Christian roots, and it simultaneously says, you are a victim.
Right.
And everybody else with their agenda, they're coming for you. And they're going to take away your guns, and they're going to take away your right to live, and they're going to burn down your churches or turn them into, big communes where orgies happen every 5 years. You don't want these secular humanists and liberals to come and take away all that you have. Christmas is under attack. They want to shred Christmas and rip Christ. So this is the Fox News culture that I came out of. And, looking now through the looking glass the other way, I'm able to go back and take, with a measure of objectivity, a look at my former self. And it's really not a biography or an autobiography as much as it is an examination of the culture. So we get into the demographics in right-wing radio and how reinforcement works and how there are actually studies done on conservative brains, like you might find tendencies in people who have conservative attitudes that are a little more fearful, more tribal, more xenophobic,
right.
That type of thing. it's controversial to say that, Shannon, right? Because now any of my fiscally conservative atheist viewers are having a fit. But I'm talking about trends and mostly about the evangelical conservatives. We talk about the death penalty, the abortion debate, and how the church frames that, and what I think many pro-choice activists miss when they're dealing with evangelicals. I mean, they're passionately fighting for a woman's right to choose, and so do I. But if you don't understand the evangelical opposition to it and why and how they're thinking, you'll never change their minds, right? And the gun culture, and then the network itself. Where did it come from? Who are the power players? What are their ties to the Trump administration? And there are plenty. And so the book is like 13 chapters, a little over 60,000 words of an exploration into this sort of corn-fed, right-wing, red, white, and blue, flag-waving, God, guns, and America culture. And I enjoyed writing it while I was also pounding my head against the table from frustration.
So you found it frustrating. What did you find frustrating about writing it? Did you find it frustrating because you were kind of faced with your former self, or did you find it frustrating because you were faced with the reality of who frames the way the culture consumes information? Or
I was more curious about myself. Like, I wasn't mad. It's like I beat myself up occasionally for taking so long to come out of Christianity, but my days of getting mad at myself for that are over. And the same's true politically. But when you look at the claims made by the major players in right-wing media, specifically Fox News,
right,
and how those claims are gobbled up mindlessly by a culture that has been trained to distrust all other media, right? Say what you will about Donald Trump, but when he screams fake news, it's a cult-like approach to controlling the flow of information. You can trust me. Everybody else you cannot trust.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's an authority figure stating that this is information that you can't trust, so that he can siphon you in to just him being the person who's the viable deliverer of accurate information, so that you don't look elsewhere, or if you do look elsewhere, you look there in order to attack the information and counteract it, or you just don't bother because you've learned that it's not just incorrect, it's maliciously incorrect.
And by saying you can trust me but do not trust them, you are becoming a reality that exists beyond reality, right? And Fox News's brand, fair, quote unquote, trademarked fair and balanced. The implication is that all the other networks, all the other newspapers and broadcast outlets, and hell, even Facebook and Twitter and investigative journalists and whoever, they're unfair. They're imbalanced. Don't trust them. You can trust us. And it was an interesting statistic that 40%, I think, of people who voted for Donald Trump said that they get their exclusive and sole source of news information was Fox News. It has been credited, this network, for the election of Donald Trump. And the implication's amazing, because a news network shifted its weight and essentially tipped the scales for an entire U.S. presidential election. I find that culture fascinating. And so, getting into the claims made by them, though, I mean, the Laura Ingrams, there was a segment of the book I talk about Tucker Carlson. He was railing about the tyranny of the metric system. Oh yeah. The rest of the world's using metric, and they want us to use kilograms and centimeters. And they called it tyranny, Shannon. They called it tyranny. And so, yes, I go and I find a brick wall, and I just
the tyranny of it's just a really, really efficient way to measure things.
Why we are so behind the rest of first world Earth, right? I mean, the United States, we're one of the only first world countries that doesn't speak at least two languages. Like you go almost anywhere in the world and people are bilingual, trilingual, or more.
Oui, j'habite en pays bilingue.
Oh, that's amazing. And, And me, I come from a culture where, we speak American here in America. And that's all you speak. That's all that exists. If it doesn't exist outside of our subjectively drawn borders, it's not important. And that's another angle of the book is tribalism. I mean, this sort of hardcore nationalistic, and I've heard people say it outright. I don't care what happened. Oh, who cares what other countries think? I don't care what the rest of the world's doing. Who cares? Screw them. I only care about me and mine, and that's it. And it's an extremely myopic way of living. And I think it's a tragic exclusion of so many beautiful people in the human condition. Plus, I think no one really does live in a bubble, even if they say they do. What we do in the United States, as you Canadians can attest, affects
Absolutely
the rest of the world, and what they do affects us. So forgive the long answer, but you got me started. I blame you, Shannon.
Yeah, well, it's entirely my fault. I was hoping to get you started, so I'm glad that it worked.
I mean, do you look down from Canada and just have a what the fuck kind of, and like every day, do you think the United States is self-immolating? Like we've come to the forks in the roads.
Yeah.
Going to point A is prudent and wise. Going to point B makes us a comedy of lunacy and destruction. And we seem to always choose B. Like, do you look down at us and go, what's the matter with you, or what?
See, I feel as though I'm in kind of a strange and unique position because I'm on a public platform and I engage with a lot of people who are Americans and have formed very close relationships with people who are American as well. I know so many wonderful, amazing, very, sort of liberal, progressive, very engaged, nuanced Americans who look at it, who look around them themselves in just utter disbelief at what's going on in the culture. So I don't look at you guys as a monolith, but that being said, when Trump was elected, I thought to myself, and this is an actual thought that I had, you guys seem to have fetishized media to a point that you've essentially turned your country into a reality TV show, to the point that you literally elected the host of a reality TV show as your president. Like, your culture consumes media in a way that you look to have your lives emulate media, or media represent your life in such a way that you'll comport to media standards in order to live what you see as a best life, because what you consume in the forms of media seems to either represent you or be what you want to be. And it concerns me because it seems as though there's a propagandized aspect to that, and you're allowing people who are more interested in selling you a product to sort of dictate and mandate the shape of the culture, to the point that everything is starting to fall apart because consumerism is so rampant and media consumption is so rampant that those become the priorities, instead of, kind of pushing those to the side and standing up and looking around at the other people who exist with you and saying, okay, how do we all exist better together? It's all about you get yours, I get mine. Yeah. I don't know. That's what it seems like to me as an outsider, and that's me not being an American, but
he's like an emoji president. I mean, in the era of emoji, right? I mean, he will not be our last cad in office who uses social media the way he does. He is a symptom, I think, of a larger problem.
And look what he's doing to Twitter right now.
Yeah.
What he's trying to do? It was some Ministry of Truth 1984 shit he was trying to do with Twitter.
What you were seeing and what you are hearing is not what's really happening. Mm-hmm. Those were his words, and you're just like, this is Orwellian to the nth degree. And his allegiant followers, who many of them exhibit cult follower. Stephen Hassan has a great book called The Cult of Trump that talks about sort of a cult-like allegiance, back to authoritarianism, right?
Right.
But, we live in a culture where nobody knows. I mean, an alarming percentage of people can't tell you who the vice president is, who can't name one Supreme Court justice, who are completely oblivious to the mechanisms that drive the political machine in this country. But you ask them about the Kardashians, you ask them about whatever flavor of the month entertainment story is going on, they can tell you all about that. We are an entertainment culture. Maybe it stands to reason that they would somehow empower the entertainment president without consideration of ability to lead, ethical compass, competency, morality, predatory behavior. Don't even get me started, because he's just a laundry list of inhumanities. And it's interesting to me too, because I get a lot of hate mail from my fellow atheists for bashing on Trump. They think I have Trump derangement syndrome, and that it's just a blind hatred for the man and not an honest assessment of the moment by moment anti-humanism that he exhibits in every aspect of his life.
That potentially has a lot to do with his priming and framing, though, because he's built it up to a point, like from a psychological perspective. The way he delivers messages is essentially saying that anybody who attacks me is being unreasonable. And there are so many people attacking him that if you're looking at him, you could see him as just being somebody who is an easy target that is consistently attacked just because, it's trendy or whatever, or he doesn't hold up to the same ideology that you do. And there's a lot of that in the culture where people essentially kind of, I don't want to say strawman, I don't know what the right word is, but they create this sort of archetype of what it's like to be a leftist, or what it's like to be somebody who dislikes Trump. And they imbue that archetype with all of the false things that he says about the type of people that attack him. And then because that archetype is built up so strongly with them, when somebody criticizes him, they fit that person into that archetype and just operate under the assumption that you're affirming what he said. He said these people are just going to attack me and they're not going to be founded on anything. So when somebody does criticize him, that affirms what he said. It's an interesting sort of setup that he's got. And it seems I'm going to, one more sec, sorry.
Go ahead.
Now you got me started.
Yeah.
It seems also as though there's some people who are invested in voting for him because he's going to appoint, and this might play more into like the Christian nation type of thing. He's going to appoint Supreme Court justices that will maybe make anti-abortion laws. He keeps signing ridiculous orders saying, religious freedom, which essentially means to them that what they hear is Christianity is going to be more prevalent or protected or whatever that means to them. And they've been taught and trained through, venues like Fox News that they are under attack, and they've legitimately felt that, like you did. Like they had an actual real emotional reaction and mental reaction to feeling that they're under attack and that they have something to be concerned about. And they see him as finally someone who's going to stop those attacks on them. So they just kind of blanket support him in order to what they think is protect themselves. I don't know. What do you think? That's a lot I just said.
I think Trump, one thing he's good at is striking at the amygdala, right? He gets the fear response going.
Right.
When people are afraid, they tend to band together, they buckle down, they lock people out, they fortify the walls. And that's why so much of what he does, I think, is speaking to a specific demographic that is afraid of the other. They're afraid of diversity. They're afraid of new ideas. They're perhaps insecure about their own faith, right? That's why if you disagree with their Christianity, they don't see it as disagreement. They see it as persecution. On top of that, add the fact that Christ in the Bible, in the New Testament, said that, if you were going to be a good Christian, you need to be persecuted for Jesus' sake. Well, what do you do in a nation where you can worship any day of any week, any time, anywhere? You can have religious symbols in your yard. You can wear Christian t-shirts and cross necklaces and Jesus tattoos, and you have Christian radio stations, television stations, and there's a good chance your politician represents your Christian faith. I mean, essentially privilege out the, and You have tremendous latitude and privilege. If you're going to be a good Christian, what do you do to become persecuted? In some ways, I think you have to manufacture a persecution narrative. And that's what a lot of these people have done. You know, if I'm a victim, if I'm oppressed, it means I'm of concern to the devil. He's coming for me. That means I'm a good soldier in God's army. This validates, this speaks to identity. This, I think, gives people a sense of importance, self-importance. You're the psychologist. How am I doing? I mean, do you sense any of that, right?
Well, I do. Like, you see people like the Ken Hams of the world weaponizing that sort of perspective. Somebody's coming after your values. They're going to, one of the things that I consistently hear it's not so much the coming after the guns or the way of life. It's the, we're not going to be allowed to believe the things that we believe anymore and say that we believe them. You know, our First Amendment's going to be gone. We're not going to be able to say that the gays shouldn't get married. We're not even going to be able to say that anymore. They'll throw you in jail for saying that. Those types of things are consistently presented as an abject reality, when in fact it's not the case. Disagreement and people pushing back against you and using their power to vote in people that align with them and working towards creating more equal and balanced legislation for all people. They take that and say, well, that means that our beliefs are getting attacked. Like we're not even going to be allowed to believe this anymore. We're not even going to be allowed to articulate it anymore because we'll be attacked and we'll be persecuted. So they're conflating disagreement with persecution, and people don't like feeling like they're bad people. So if you come up against a culture that's been cultivated that says, hey, we don't like it when you say, that gay people shouldn't be able to get married. We don't like it when you say that you should have the right to tell somebody what they can do with their uterus. You need to kind of sit back. You don't get to make the mandates anymore. You don't have the prescription for morality that the entire culture needs to adhere to. They don't like hearing that. To them, that feels like persecution. So when they deliver a message stating we are being persecuted, it resonates because they already feel like they are, because they're not used to being disagreed with, because they have that privilege you talk about, and they have for so long, that when somebody says, hey, you're not being a very good person right now, they go, oh, how dare you? Wait. I am a good person. I believe in God. It's not even me that's saying it. It's Jesus that said this, and how dare you? And they conflate that with persecution, and that feeling is real to them. So when somebody delivers that message, they go, yes, the other day at the grocery store, someone said that I was a bad person. And that's the same thing.
When I was in Christian radio, we always had, there is a reinforcement culture that is warning people about the coming godlessness that will ruin the nation. Yeah. There was a song by an artist named Morgan Cryer. The song was called Pray in the USA. And it was this sort of fist in the air anthem, yeah. And the bridge of the song said, I think I can remember it verbatim, someday they may say it, praying is a felony. I guess they'll call us criminals, and I guess that's what I'll be. And then the chorus kicks in, you can still pray in the USA, defiantly, right? Fist in the air, you're not going to take away my right. Well, on what planet is this free nation going to rip away from its citizens the right to privately pray to God?
I can hear people saying school prayers right now. I can hear a chorus
they
of
were
people
pissed
saying
off
prayer in school.
because
that's what they think.
Now, you're not going to let us pray. You can pray all you want in school. We're not going to have school sanctioned prayer. But you can pray all you want. You think Jesus gives a shit if you do it over here with somebody leading at the front of the class? Prayer is personal. Do it privately. Right. You're not even supposed to go out and showcase your prayer anyway. Jesus made fun of the hypocrites who went out and prayed in public. And the whole thing just crumbles upon analysis. But, I was that guy, and I used to feel that way. I used to have a tremendous belief that we were founded by devout Christians who were near saints. Washington, Jefferson, Madison, Paine, Franklin, they were all saint-like people. Okay, fine. Some were slave owners. But other than, a few personal quirks, they were all devout, Jesus-loving Christians. Did I take any time to go and learn our history to find out what Jefferson and Madison and Paine, Franklin, etc., really believed? No. And when I did, imagine my surprise. And I have a chapter about the founding fathers in the book, where we talk about the fact that, hey, as much as people like Dr. Robert Jeffress at First Baptist Dallas want to say the founding fathers established a Christian nation, just listen to their words. And they purposefully said, religion private, the government's not a church, hard line, don't cross it. It was basic. And that's another maddening thing. When you see people who are purposefully distorting the secular constitution of this country and doing it for the advancement of a single religion. If this was Islam, they'd be having a fit, or any other religion. But with Christianity, hey, I say in the book that why would they upset the apple cart when they're enjoying all the apples? And that's how I feel about Christian privilege.
Yeah, I feel like I had a chat with Andrew Seidel about this a couple weeks ago, who wrote a great book about it. And to me, it seems as though they're confusing the loss of privilege with persecution. So they've enjoyed a privileged position where they were able to essentially kind of run roughshod over the society with the way that they wanted their religious culture to be. Like, they wanted society to reflect their religion. And for a substantial portion of time, it kind of did, until people started to go, hey, not all of us think the same as you. Maybe we should find a better way to construct a society. And, our Constitution seems to kind of support that we should be a little bit more secular. And they were like, whoa, 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 you're breaking apart the country. The country's already the way I like it. I like it like this because this is the way I like it. So shh. I don't want it to change because I like it like this. I'm benefiting from it. I enjoy it. This is the way I'm comfortable. I don't want to be uncomfortable. But what's strange is these are the same people that will say that something like privilege doesn't exist when they're abjectly benefiting from it. So much so that they feel it, if the slight semblance of them feeling as though it's slipping away is enough to send them into an absolute uproar where they feel as though they need to just go scattershot on everything just to get things back to, to make America great again.
Yeah.
Because it was great for them. It wasn't great for everybody, but it's about them. And they just don't seem to see it.
Like, when exactly were we great? Like, I'll usually ask somebody who says that. Like, what decade?
When?
And they'll be like, back in the wholesome, and then they'll usually pick mid-20th century, 1950s.
Oh.
Okay. All right. Hang on just a second. Okay, hang on. All right. So let's see. Women only had the right to vote for 30 years at that point.
Mm-hmm.
They called gays sodomites. It was the Cold War, the Red Scare, the communist witch hunt. We were terrified of nuclear attack. We had kids in the hallways of their schools doing duck and cover drills. I'm sorry, how does ducking under a desk when a thermonuclear weapon is dropped on you help? I don't know, but our children were doing it.
Segregated schools?
Segregated schools.
Forced sterilization if you were gay?
It's women. If you got pregnant, you were sent off to those homes for wayward mothers, young mothers. Sometimes the babies were taken away in forced adoptions.
Forced lobotomization for people who had mental health issues.
You and I, right? We're on that page going, what's your metric for greatness? And
middle-class white people were able to afford lots of stuff.
And they believe and held to this sort of Norman Rockwell-esque beaver cleaver portrait, this lie about our history that has been perpetuated. And I think, what I really want to go back to all of that was that greatness. I disagree. I think we have done better, and I think we'll be able to do much better in the decades ahead.
Yeah.
But it's always fun experiment. I'm always like, okay, fine. When exactly were we great? Pick a decade and just watch them. They'll kind of twitch, and then they'll usually pick the 50s, and then you can just go to town on them. It's awesome.
Yeah, if you're picking a decade where there's the majority of the people perhaps were living in a privileged position solely because of the subjugation of other groups of people and the ability for, in this instance, cis heterosexual white men to monopolize all of the entirety of the job market, because women were either discouraged from working or just flat out not allowed to work, or weren't qualified to work because they were also discouraged or disqualified from education. Then, I mean, look in the mirror. Like, take a second and ask yourself if you just like the idea of the fact that there was wealth at that time, and you haven't really focused in on why the people that you relate to during that time period maybe had some wealth, or do you maybe have some privilege that you need to check?
Yeah. It's funny, just to digress for a second. I have one eye on your comment section.
And I'm
astounded.
bad at monitoring that.
I'm astounded at how relatively civil everyone is.
My viewers are utterly, completely, and totally the best viewers ever.
I mean, it's YouTube.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying there isn't awfulness. I'm just saying a little bit. But I mean, considering there's an absence of awfulness for YouTube comments that I find impressive. So
I have worked very diligently, and my mods are wonderful, to help cultivate an environment on this channel that encourages complex dialogues and civil discourse, where people can feel free to ardently disagree with one another, but we do not allow racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic attacks. It's an immediate ban. And you're timed out if you engage in insults, so that you can take a moment and think about how you would like to engage in the dialogue. If it's important to you that your voice be heard, you don't need to insult somebody. And that attracts a wonderful group of people, and I'm incredibly blessed. And I just hit 20,000 subscribers yesterday, so as it turns out, there's an audience for that. And I'm incredibly lucky. I never thought that it would have happened, but
have you had though? I mean, I monitor YouTube comments on the day of a release just to make sure I didn't screw something up. Right. There's not a technical glitch or a factual error.
Sure.
But who's got the time to go back and watch, and who has the mental bandwidth to process the awfulness that comment sections are? Yeah. So I don't really moderate them very much unless I hear from someone that there's someone who's being abusive, and I'll go back and remove them. But like on Facebook, normally I just let everybody do what they're going to do. I try to set a tone. I try to watch and listen as best I can, so it's not just a one-way street.
Right.
But I try not to get lost in the mire. But lately, Shannon, I have found myself. I'm not a block guy. Like I'm not the guy who's like, I'm going to block you. And yet a couple of weeks ago, I just hit a point of critical mass. It's not that they disagreed. It's not that we were having even a passionate discussion about the issues. It's that they were hammering on every post, day by day, moment by moment, awfulness. And I had this sort of thing like, I am tired of the noises you make. Is that sad? I have grown weary of the noises you're making on my page, my personal page. And I'm just like, fuck it. You're gone. You're gone. I didn't do very many, but I did enough to make me feel better and to make the page quieter. And immediately, they found another way around, going, "Ma, free speech. You just want an echo chamber. You don't want anybody to be disagreed with, blah, blah, blah." And for your mental health, I think you have to take a certain kind of commenter who continues to toxify or just drive you crazy, and just show them the door, right? I mean, thanks for coming. Sorry you've worn out your welcome. Have a good life, right?
See, well, so far I've managed to this may change. You have 300,000 subscribers and I only have 20. So there's a different amount of comments that I would have to deal with than from what you would have to deal with. So I'm not super, like, my actual, like, my mods in the live chat take really great care of my live chat in real time. The comments afterwards, however, that's entirely on me. I have a weird disposition, and the ones that are like incredibly vitriolic and attack me, I enjoy them. I think they're hilarious. Like, they don't affect me. The only comments that really affect me are the comments that are ardently people saying that I'm hurting people. I dislike those because I feel as though that they're an assessment of me and based on limited information without actually having a conversation with me. But that's a whole side thing. I've never blocked anyone on Twitter, not one person, because potentially naively, and like I say, my bandwidth will change if I get bigger. I think to myself, I want to give people the opportunity to change their mind with me. I want to be better, not the same. And sometimes that's exceptionally hard. And sometimes I have to walk just for a day or two entirely from social media for that reason. But I try to rationalize it. I try to think to myself, and this is nuanced. Here's the thing, because everybody's anonymous and they're all behind their different avatars or names or whatever. Some people are engaging with me, like they chose to engage with me for a reason. There's a reason that they're on my page. There's a reason that they're on my channel. There's a reason that they're on my Facebook, my Twitter, whatever it is. And I said something that's either dramatically upset them or has challenged them. And if it's challenged them and they're dissonant, they may see me as a target, because if they can discredit me, that may be a way that they can quell that dissonance. If they can say, well, she's an idiot and she's a moron, and the reason she said that and that made me feel weird or feel uncomfortable is because she's dumb, and I need her to know that she's dumb because I'm not wrong. That may be that those sometimes, not always, not even frequently, unfortunately, can be breaking points for people. Those can be turning points for people. Now, that being said, you have to take care of your own mental health too. And sometimes it can be overwhelming because I can't engage with every single one of those comments. I can't. I don't engage with very many at all anymore. And when I do, sometimes I'll just like back away because it can become clear that the person's not listening to what I have to say or doesn't want to have a conversation with me. They want to yell at me about what they think, and they don't want to listen to what I have to say back to them about why I think it.
I think
so I don't know. Like, what do you think? It's hard.
There are some people, I think, who they feed on agitation.
Right. Oh, for sure. There's definitely that demographic exists. There's people that are posed that just want to see the world burn. For sure.
At some point, yeah, you're doing your best to assess intent. Mm-hmm. If you are a disruptive force for the rest of the community, you have worn out your welcome. Mm-hmm. I don't owe you time. I don't owe you a comment section. I don't owe you any of that stuff, right? If you're going to come and disrupt everybody else, it's not about agreement or disagreement. You're just unpleasant, and I'm going to show you the door. And then sometimes, and it doesn't happen a lot, but there was somebody on my page I didn't even know what we were talking about, but they were going off into, I think the straw that broke the camel's back was something having to do with the fact that they heard that Hitler in his personal life was a really nice man. You know, it's just. Okay,
yeah.
What happened? I can't. No, wait. How does one get there? How does one?
He fed puppies on the street.
Bye. I'm sorry. I can't. No, I can't. My mental health needs to be protected.
Well, you have to. You don't. That's an important thing that you said. You don't owe anybody that. And it's sometimes hard as a content creator too, because you feel as though, you're benefiting from this audience. You want to interact with this audience. You want to engage in this audience. You want to give something of yourself to the audience. And especially if you're somebody who's an activist side by side with that, because you're attempting to affect change. And if you're attempting to affect change, you can't just throw something up. Or, well, I mean, you can, but it's more beneficial if you throw something up and then engage with the people who are interested with the ideas or rile against the ideas. And if you're somebody who's intellectually stimulated by things like that, then of course you're going to want to engage with that. Like when people are kind of niggling at you, you're going to want to go, oh, okay, yeah, no, like this is an objection I thought of. I'm going to tell you, you know, why I feel as though it maybe isn't a good objection, those types of things. But, and I even talked about this when I was on your channel. What I've come to realize, and something that I think is very important, is that when it comes to all of these issues and these complex dialogues, some people are going to be attracted to the discourse itself because they have abusive or controlling personalities. And if you are a personality that's in the public eye, them taking you down a peg or them building up a group of people against you is more emotionally satisfying to them as an abuser than would be just actually honestly engaging with the nuance of what you're trying to say and attempting to understand your perspective.
Yeah. I had some success doing this, and it's been an interesting social experiment. Like I try to do, I can be snarky, right? I mean, I'm not nearly at your Olympic level. All right. I am a mere Padawan, but
Stop following me on Twitter, Seth.
I can throw the zinger out, and sometimes it feels so good, and sometimes I think it's good. You roast the sacred cows. Okay, fine. But I find myself more than that. If I see people starting to be awful to each other, I'll go into a comment section and say, hey, there's no reason to speak like that to so-and-so. You know, they have a right to have that specific opinion. You have the right to disagree. But this name, this ad hominem, this insult, this slur, it's totally unnecessary. It's totally unhelpful. Let's just stop. And it doesn't always work, but sometimes every once in a while, a significant percentage of times, someone will say, you know what, you were right. And I'm sorry I said that. And I'll do better next time. Here's kind of where that came from. I had a bad day, or, you know, this is a hot topic for me, or whatever. And by jumping in and de-escalating, even online, somebody responded to that. It just took a second to sort of blink. You like to take them out of the ramping up, just to hit pause, right? Let's take an exit real quick and breathe. And it changed the temperature of the rest of the thread. Wow. And that gives me hope. Like it is possible, you know.
It is. So. It absolutely is possible. And it's difficult because I think also we're in a strangely unique position because we want to engage in these things. We're invested in engaging in these things. We're the ones who are putting out the content that people are engaging in. So, of course, we want to see what happens. We want to be right. We want to be nuanced. We want to understand perspective. So it behooves us to read at least some of the comments and engage in some of the social media platforms to whatever degree we're comfortable with in order, if we're being honest, to make sure, you know, we're understanding perspectives, we're representing ourselves and other people well, and when we're speaking potentially even on behalf of people, which sometimes happens, that we're incorporating and understanding their perspectives so that we're better advocates and allies for them. Those are all really, really important things, but that means that we also see the shit pile. And it's human nature, I think, for that to resonate with us more. And for that to resonate with anybody more, anybody engaging in these sort of dialogues, when somebody has a really biting, harsh criticism and is being vitriolic, you gravitate towards that more so than the person saying, oh, okay, that makes sense, neat. Like, you want to go, hey, no. You weren't listening to what I had to say. But
I'd like to think that, I wonder if whoever, the people who developed the internet realized that so often, alarmingly often, it would simply be a tool that people use to be awful to each other. Right? Bill and Ted's new movie's coming out. The trailer dropped today, right?
Oh,
so I was using that line, be excellent to one another. And then immediately the what battery starts. Well, what about the fascists? I'm not going to be excellent to a fascist or a Nazi or blah, blah, blah. And you're trying to set a tone. You're trying to give a relatively, I think, helpful sentiment. We're all part of the human condition. When possible, let's try to elevate each other, right? I elevate you, you elevate me, everybody wins, life becomes better, right? I'm really that kind of guy. I'd like to buy the world a Coke, all right? A kumbaya kind of, we're all the human family kind of dude. Be excellent whenever possible. Be excellent to one another. And I'd like to see that sentiment take hold. But, it doesn't get a lot of clicks.
No.
People don't gravitate to that the way they gravitate to mayhem and insults and blood and pain and controversy and scrapping and all that stuff. I try not to lose heart, but we've talked about this before. I struggle a little bit with it. Like, is this all we are? Like, is this all we got? Just being awful to each other on the internet? Is that really what we've become?
It's not all we've got. It's just what we notice.
Maybe.
I think that that's an important, people, when they're emotionally invested in issues in particular and have the shroud of anonymity, are able to be the worst versions of themselves as a form of catharsis. They're able to. You think some of that then stems from anger.
A feeling of helplessness and frustration? Sometimes. So it's like kind of a lashing out kind of deal?
Absolutely. I think sometimes that's the case. The issue is that all you see is typeface. You don't see the person's face. You don't know their history. You don't know their relation to the issue. All we have the opportunity to do is compare what we see them write with previous interactions we had that seem similar. And usually that kind of creates a bias in us. And it's a fair bias to think that, oh, okay, you're like the other people that said this thing that was similar to the thing that you typed out. And they just want to see the world burn. And this is where I get caught up. And maybe I hope it doesn't get burned out of me. It may, because sometimes it's hard because you reach Dunbar's number, right? Like you just get inundated to the point that you're just like, I can't. But the way I look at it, or I try to look at it, is I don't know why you typed that thing to me. Are you typing that thing to me, that thing that hurt me potentially, or I feel as though is unrepresentative or hurts a group of people or is bigoted or whatever? Insert shitty thing here. Because you want to hurt me, or because you're hurt and you want me to know. And just thinking about the fact that I don't know, that's a 50-50 chance. It's Schrodinger's comment to me. And I try to take pause and think, you don't know me. You don't know my full perspective. You're invested in what I had to say, or you're invested in this dialogue for whatever reason. Maybe this was just you reacting and not who you are. And I hope people would give me the same courtesy. So that's where I sit with it now. But I completely understand. Like, it's hard. Like, but then I reach a point. Like, when you're like, but Hitler pet puppies in this street. I'm just like, here's the thing. Go fuck yourself. Off you go. We're done. like once I explore the conversation,
of
but
snark.
It's the initial reaction, right? That I try to take pause with. We have a pile of questions, and we've already been talking for an hour. Seth and I both hate talking. That's the problem.
Yeah. This is what happens when you invite a host to be a guest. I just suck the oxygen into my lungs and expel the CO2 as fast as I can. Throw me some questions. I'll try to answer them quickly.
All right, Guy, let's go. All right. So, Paulogia asked a question. I guess I'll read it. Pardon me. Oh, I don't know if I can read it. Let me see if I can scroll down. Seth, if Seth could be king of America for a week, what legislation would he push through as priority? what most needs fixing via government. Paul is not taking it easy on you, but
Okay, so wait a minute. Paul's question is, how do we fix the world?
right.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for that. Yeah.
How do you fix the world? I don't have to answer the question.
I don't know.
You.
I think I don't know that I would pass new legislation. I think I would restore the existing church-state separation. I think if you stop making the government a church, it solves a bunch of the other problems. We start to get past much of the bigotry. We get past discrimination against LGBTQ people. We don't see churches who are given a hall pass to dance over the church-state line. Paula White's not in the White House, Jerry Falwell Jr., Franklin Graham, et cetera, and all the problems that brings into the equation. I think, a reinforce it helps to protect the courts. You are no longer looking at a specific party that is having the influence to try to stack the Supreme Court and other courts at every level with theist judges, activist judges, rather. So I don't know. If I had to think about it, I'm sure I'd have a better answer. But at this point, I don't know that I would try anything new. I would start by trying to restore what the American experiment was. And that would certainly not be a church government, a theocracy government.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so I'll go through super chats first. So if you have questions, make sure you at me. If you didn't send a super chat, I'll go through the super chats first because you guys were kind enough to pay to ask questions. Ninad Cubic says, internet is not a problem. It is just a tool. People are the problem. Shannon, it's always a pleasure to watch your streams. What do you think about that? I think that's actually kind of fair. Really,
it's almost like alcohol, right? When you're drunk, does it really amplify who you are? And is that always a good thing? I don't know if that's true, but is the internet like a bottle of vodka and it just amplifies what was already there? And so maybe you're really extra loving and I love you and I love everybody and Paulogia, I love Paulogia, I just come here you. Or are you belligerent and nasty and awful? I mean, I don't know. I do know that I think it's a double-edged sword. The internet has, in a wonderful way, given the common person a voice, and in a horrifying way has given the every person a voice. And it's two sides of the same coin. And I've seen good people be awful online, but I've also seen an amplification of who they already are. There may be some truth to that. Maybe it's like a megaphone for what was already in your heart. And now you hide behind the avatar and you hit the all caps button and you get to sort of blow that sort of venom out and you're less inhibited. Yeah, there might be some truth to that.
I think for the first time in history, we're able to consistently be exposed to the inner lives of everyone, because you have that anonymity, you have the opportunity to consistently say what you think without repercussion, and that power is sometimes used by people for just a massive amount of good, but it's a society, and
like some
not
people,
all people
we've
are
all met
innately
people.
good.
We've all met people who are like, you should never say what you think. I know, like,
Just maybe shut up.
in theory, it's yes, you should be able to express yourself in a free society. But if you're at a party, there's always someone, and you're like, oh God, don't ask him what he thinks about this, because you will hear what he thinks about that, and it's terrifying.
Yeah, don't ask Uncle Dave what he thinks about the unions. That sort of thing. Like, don't approach him and ask him about what he thinks about the government or the conservatives.
Don't ask him about his MAGA hat, because that's half an hour that you will never get back. No one will ever change. They're just going to get mad. Don't save yourself.
Too funny. Oh, Trevor's here. I don't know if you know who Trevor Val. I can never pronounce his name right. Valley is. He's awesome. He's a paleontologist. He's been on here before. The only time America was great was about 70 million years ago, before there were humans and dinosaurs ruled the earth. Spoken like a true paleontologist. Trevor's pretty awesome. Hi, Trevor. From Cap and Kerf. Stay weird, Shannon. I am weird, and I will stay that way. From Julie LaVoice. I am tired of the sounds that you make. I love you both. Seth, your podcast helped me so much. Oh, there you go.
Oh,
And then
I'm
Julie
glad.
again.
That's really what I wanted. I started doing the show back as one thing about having a background in communications and storytelling is that I started when the movement was still really devoid of a lot of storytellers. We had a lot of really smart people, smarter than me, these PhD types, and they're under the white hot fluorescent lights and they're giving lectures, and it's very dry. But there weren't a lot of storytellers and empathizers and encouragers. And so I sort of came along at a really good time. And that's really what I wanted the show to be. Let's take a journey together. Let's do life together. I don't know any more than anybody else, but I'm good at flapping my gums. And so let's just remind each other that we're all in this together, maybe learn some stuff along the way. And 500 plus shows later, we're still kicking. So that's a great compliment. Thank you very much for it.
Awesome. And again from Julie, and this is the last super chat, and then I'll go look at the questions. Shannon, thank you for helping to end the stigma surrounding mental health. Wow, that means a lot. I appreciate that, Julie. I'm glad that you follow the channel, and it's something that means a lot to me. So I'm glad that you recognize that in the channel. Right. So this is from Nemo Utopian. I would also like to hear about how the book perhaps deals with his growth in understanding LGBTQ issues. I had to struggle with my own homophobic issues as I left religion.
I have a whole chapter called The Gay Agenda, and it tells the story about when my best friend Corey, who we were just the closest, and we met in high school and we kept in touch. And about 11 years after we had met, he lived in Dallas. Mm-hmm. And he had kept a secret, and he had kept it so well, I had no suspicion that he was gay. And he sent me a letter sort of coming out to me. I need to tell you something, Seth. I need you to know this about me. And I'm still a devout fundamentalist Christian at the time, right? Being gay is a sin. Gays go to hell. We're still in the AIDS crisis coming out of the 80s, where it's the gay disease, God's judgment upon homosexuals. I was infected with all these bad ideas. And I remember I was traumatized by the letter, and my parents, their attitudes totally flipped, and they wanted nothing to do with them. And we didn't speak for a year. I mean, it just screwed me up. I was like, I just couldn't process it. And after that year, the obvious finally hit me that, I missed him. And he was still the same beautiful, amazing, wonderful. I trust him with my life, this guy. And so I reached out and I was like, I'm sorry. Let's try to rebuild what's been broken. And he was so generous and so forgiving, and we rebuilt that friendship, and we've remained friends today. And I call him all the time, and he calls me, and he's like, outside of Natalie, the most beautiful person that I know. And humanizing him and fighting for his right to be able to live his life and be true to him, and also learning about the nature of sexuality. When you're not devoutly religious and you were talking about the gays in this sort of pejorative fashion, but you realize that non-heterosexuality exists throughout nature. Is the bottlenose dolphin in rebellion against God? Is the mallard duck
penguins?
In sin?
Oh man, penguins rebel hard.
You look around, hundreds and hundreds of animal species that exhibit non-heterosexuality, and you're like, well, this is as natural as can be. And that's sort of how I got through it, humanizing Corey, and then taking a look around my world to see that sexuality comes in many forms and flavors. And then on top of that, forgive the longer answer, but on top of that, what threat is a gay person to a hetero couple? And like a church couple is freaked out about gay marriage. And I always say, look, if someone else's gay marriage can affect your marriage, then either you or your spouse is gay, right? I mean, and then they're like, well, I'm afraid that you'll influence like my children to infect them with gay. And I'm like, oh, that's right. Because because heterosexual parents only give birth to heterosexual children. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. See, if, on every level, it just falls apart. And being able to accept people and advocate for people for me has been far more fulfilling than being a bigot against them ever was. So I'd never go back.
That's amazing. I think that speaks towards something I believe, and I may go back to questions in a second, but I think this is something that's important to touch on. I think, and people rile against it, that one of the best ways to convince somebody that their ideas about a group of people are bad are to form relationships with that group of people. So in your instance, this was your best friend. You had a pre-existing relationship, so you had to find a way to reconcile it when you realized that that relationship was valuable to you. If you're somebody who's in a polarized group that is, insulated and segregated and is just, riling yourselves up about why these people are the bad people, and you spend all your time doing the research on why we're better than them and why they're bad and why they're shitty and why they're ruining society, and then you as an individual have a relationship-based interaction or exposure or a conversation that isn't just an argument with somebody who's a member of that group, and you're able to build trust or a relationship or even some form of understanding, that puts a chink in the armor. Which is why I think what people like you and me do is as, even though it might be hard sometimes, is a valuable contribution, because when people look at atheists, sometimes they think, you're trying to whatever, right? No morals, just want to sin, whatever, like, insert stupid whatever the fuck here. But
Yeah.
when you actually give the person who hates you the time of day, as hard as it might be, and you shouldn't have to, sometimes that's what it takes. And it takes there's all kinds of strategies that work, but that is one of the strategies that, from a psychological standpoint, I just think that it is powerfully effective and relatively consistently effective in infiltrating the mind of somebody so that they can realize, I was thinking wrong. I made this straw man parasocial version of this entire group of people, but when I get to know members of that group of people, I realize how wrong I was, because they're people. Like, they can no longer divorce that group from humanity.
Yeah.
Because
I think the research bears that out.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely does.
Dr. Ryan Cragen is a sociologist at the University of Tampa, and they did some studies, and the best determiner for changing minds was changing someone's social circle, right?
For sure.
If you go at them, like I used to go at people with data, if I only show them the inconsistencies in the Bible, they will slough off all of this horrible magical thinking, and they will run off to rationalism, and we will all sing together, and there'll be music and harps and confetti, and it'll be beautiful. And of course, it never happened.
Right.
And if I walked in with like an atheist shirt on or whatnot, and they didn't know me, the walls go up, they shut down. I'm a label. I had no traction. And what I began to do is I went in and we just talked about life stuff. And I didn't lead with my activism at all.
Right.
And we laughed, and they got to know me as a human being. And like, there's a couple of tennis friends who play tennis. So we went out, we hit the ball, and hey, Seth and Natalie going to come out and play tennis with us. And so we played a few matches, and it was like, it was a few weeks before we really got into, hey, what do you do for a living? By that time, I was a nice guy who loved his family, who had a sense of purpose and a lot of joy, and was fun to be around and all those things. And when they heard atheist, I mean, literally, it just like screwed them up, because they could not discount me as a label. They had already seen me as a person. And because of that, one of them borrowed my book, and we've had some great discussions. And this is when minds begin to change, or at least open to new ideas. So I think the research very much bears that out. Let's be human beings first, and then we can talk about the other stuff.
Yeah. And I kind of understand why people rail against it too, especially if you've been the target of those groups of people that cultivate that type of hate. You don't owe that group of people anything, right? So you want to protect yourself. So I understand it, but what I hate to see is when it's discouraged. Like, I don't think that it should be a mandate. I'm not saying that you should have to do it or it's the only way.
And help me understand, what should be a mandate?
No. So what I'm saying is, I don't think it should be a mandate that if somebody hates you or is a member of a hate group that targets a demographic that you belong to, I don't think it should be a mandate that you should attempt to be friendly with those people, obviously.
I agree with that.
But what I hate to see, and I do see it, is that when somebody says, maybe bridging the gap might be a good idea. Maybe this might be an effective strategy. If not for everybody, at least for some, and it's worth a try. And they're immediately told, oh, okay, you're going to platform them, or you're friends with a person who's trying. When really you're essentially just trying to enact that strategy that's proven to be effective, that once that exposure is a disinfectant for bad ideas regarding groups of people. It's very, very difficult to hold a bigoted perception about a group of people if you have a personal relationship with somebody who belongs to that group of people. That's why shunning takes place, because the dissonance can't be resolved if you're consistently exposed to that person. You need to push them away so that you can retain the shitty idea you have about the group that they belong to. And it drives me. I don't know. Maybe you feel differently, but when somebody does try to bridge that gap and gets attacked, I'm like, oh, but maybe it'll work.
Yeah.
Leave them alone. They have the same goals as you. Like, not everybody responds to a different strategy.
Where there's light, there's heat, right? And
Yeah.
and there have been instances where I've seen, some people who are like, they declare another activist ideologically impure because they aren't activisting
Canceled.
the way that you say. And so, well, if you're not doing it this way, well, now you're an enemy. And if you're an enemy, you're in league with them. And you are now other. And people are there's a divisive sort of recreational outrage kind of culture out there that likes to knee jerk into oblivion. And part of their narrative is, you shouldn't talk to so-and-so, or you shouldn't have them on your show, or you shouldn't take the stage to debate them because you're validating them, and they've already proven that they are invalid. Why in the world would you give them any time in the limelight? And I think the key to bad speech is better speech.
Right.
And so I reserve the right to stand on stage next to whoever, and I will talk about the issues, whatever they are. And that doesn't mean I'm in league. It doesn't mean I validated them. It doesn't mean any of those things. And this is something I've had to evolve my own position on. There was an event that took place a long time ago in, was it Milwaukee or somewhere? And it was an event where they had a guy on. It was controversial, and it just splintered the atheist community. And I was on the roster to go speak, and I'd never been presented with that kind of controversy. That's not why I do conferences. I was totally what do I do? And finally, I just pulled my name off the roster, said I'm not going. And it's funny, Shannon, because now on the other side of that, I wish I had not canceled.
Really?
I wish I had gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would have had to disagree with the organizers from the stage and say, the invitation to this person is problematic. Their ideas are problematic. I would have debated.
God, that would have been more powerful than him being unopposed.
I would have, in fact, in retrospect, 2020 hindsight, I probably would have. I would have agreed to sit across from that person and challenge their ideas in front of a live audience. I'm not saying it was a friendly audience. It was really splintered and relatively awful. But I think, that's how the better ideas win. That person didn't leave any more valid than he was before. But I think that is something about that I learned from this big blow up. And, if it comes up again and I see the opportunity to speak about or to something that speaks to my value system, or I want to stand for or against, I reserve the right to take whatever stage I want. I don't give a shit if somebody else declares me ideologically impure or not, right? We're in the arena of ideas. May the best ideas win.
Right. And it's hard because the road to more inclusion shouldn't ever include forced segregation. You shouldn't be, or forced behavioral outcomes. You shouldn't say you have to act this way in order to. The goals should matter, I think.
Let's say that you had somebody on your show, and I was like, "Oh, that's unfortunate," right? I mean, do you really?
It could happen.
I mean, this person's acting in bad faith. There's no such thing as bad publicity. I don't think anything will come of it. Let's say I have that position,
right?
Okay? I might hold that position and say, Shannon, are you sure? As a friend. And then if you have the conversation, you're still Shannon, doing a shit ton of good. You've got a great community, 20,000 subscribers, and probably a lot more viewers. You're doing what you do. You're still you. You are still a person of integrity who wants to help change the world for the better. We simply had a disagreement about one little thing over here. But there is a culture of those who will literally marry you to what they consider to be an ideologically impure position. And if you're only 98% with them and not 100%, you are now othered. You are an ideological enemy. You are also someone who is supposed to be mobbed and targeted, probably publicly, right? You are baited and called out and vilified. I mean, we've got to resist this sort of action. We've got to be able to disagree among ourselves and still support each other if we remain on the same side. And so many of us do. We want to change the world. We want to help people break out of superstition and out of the bonds that they have been enchained. We want to see the best ideas win. I mean, why in the world would I be your enemy because I disagreed with something you did somewhere? It just, to me, it frustrates me. If there's something I could change about the movement, and good luck defining it, I think that would be it. Is this sort of eagerness to divide when we have to unite if we're going to defeat this hugely organized religious machine,
Yeah. We could talk about this for hours. I have a few more super chats, and I'm already holding you past an hour.
Go ahead. I'm good. Go ahead.
Junkshot Library said, Seth was my intro to YouTube atheism, so thank you. There you go.
Oh,
you're a gateway drug, Seth.
You're a veteran. I listened to Seth when I was a child. That's normally how I hear it. Yeah. No, you're very kind.
No,
Thank
that's right.
you
I was 5 when I first listened to Seth's show. I'm actually only a couple years younger than you, Seth. You're fine.
Okay.
I'm significantly older than I look. Congrats on... I just called you old by saying I look young, by the way. Just in case you didn't catch that.
I am seasoned. Yes.
All right. Congrats on reaching 20,000 subs, Shannon. Thank you for best name ever. And thank you for always promoting healthy conversations. I always love hearing how Seth changed his mind about the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And you wrote a book for anybody who's tuning in late. It is called, what's it called, Seth? Where can they find it?
It's called Confessions of a Former Fox News Christian. It is a pre-sale thing. You can get a signed copy. And that as soon as I get the notification that the formatting's done and it's gone to Amazon and Audible, I'm going to pull the plug on the pre-sale. So if you want an autographed copy, it may not be there in a couple of days. It may be there in 3 weeks. I don't know. But play it safe. Just go to SethAndrews.com and you'll find a link there to the pre-sale and everything else. It's all right.
And I put a link in the description both to your YouTube channel, and I actually think I put it to the Thinking Atheist.
Yeah,
but
fine.
I made sure that there was book pre-sale. It's right on the front page of the Thinking Atheist as well.
You're very kind to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. It's right in the description. So I am going to let you go because I know you had a relatively hard stop. I could, and also if we start again, we're going to go for another 30 minutes. That's a fact. That's an absolute
We enter
fact.
this weird universe. It's like Inception, where when you go to one level, time slows down, and you're there for months and decades. Yeah.
All right. Well,
it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for the invite.
I very much appreciate you coming. I'm so glad that you finally did. I can't believe I didn't invite you on earlier, and that blows my mind that I didn't, because I don't like you and I didn't want to talk to you.
Well,
That's why.
take a number. You and the rest of the comment sections, take a number. No, no, no. And thanks to your audience and for everybody for the kind words and support. I think ultimately, people ask me, how do I want to make a difference? What do I do? Do I start a podcast or a YouTube channel? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is for you, except to find out what you're good at and what you're passionate about, and start there. I would also start with what you know and who you know. So my encouragement would be, well, no one person ever changes the world, but you can change the world for maybe a neighbor with a conversation you're having, a coworker. Maybe you're a musician. You can pull a Shelley Siegel and start, producing songs, and maybe you're an artist. You can express sort of a freedom from superstition or other sort of bondage, religious bondage. Find out what you're good at, find out what you're passionate about, and start there. And I think if we can all work together, remembering we're part of the same family, we can buy the world a Coke and we can change the world. And I really do think it's possible. So thanks again.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Now I'm going to put up my end screen. And Seth, I'm a very professional YouTuber. Everybody can see the end screen right now, but they can't see us. They can still hear us, though,
Okay.
because I don't have outro music yet because I'm amazing at everything I do. So bye, everyone. Help elevate the discourse. And I waved again, even though no one can see me because I do that every single time. All right, we are